Welcome to the fourth module of the Focus Shift webinar series. I'm Michelle Messina, and I appreciate Sarah Hill from Enterprise Ireland coordinating all of this for us. She's based in Austin, Texas, used to be in the Bay Area. You guys already know a little bit about my background, and so I'll skip over that. And just as a reminder, you guys get a copy of these slides in PDF format, which Sarah already has. Today, we're going to move into talking about a new narrative. We've been talking in the last couple sessions about communication and leadership, crisis communication, and then the impact assessment of the pandemic on your business. So today, it's time to talk about how your narrative should shift based on how your business is changing or how your customers in the market are responding. So I think the main point I'm going to talk about today is adaptation and change. And I kind of love this quote from the author of Frankenstein, where she says, "Nothing is so painful to the human mind as a great and sudden change." So that's what we're dealing with now today. And we don't know what the new normal will be after the shelter-in-place orders are lifted, after we see a drop in the pandemic cases, you know, that sort of thing. But the fact of the matter is we're not going back to what we did before. So it's time for us to talk about what a new narrative really means. So in this economy, we have to do something different because many of us are very severely impacted by lack of customer sales. Some of us are prohibited from doing business because we're non-essential businesses. And so this is a time to really focus on how us as an organization can be more flexible, more adaptive to the changes in the market. And we want to remain relevant and creative and connected to our market after this is over. And we also want to look at how we can shape and change the perspectives of our customer to continue to maintain us in their mindset. And very importantly, we want to drive revenue now. So the whole idea of a new narrative is to help us deal with the economic changes, understand how creative and relevant our teams are, and then drive revenue in the marketplace. So I talked about this the other day, last week, about value that your company delivers. Some of you are product companies, some of you are service, some of you are a combination of product and service companies. But I want to remind you that your product offerings are still very valid. Your service, your expertise, your knowledge, and your talent are very valid. And your company was created to share these products and these services with the market. So that's not going away, but it is definitely changing. I want to talk a little bit about your value proposition and why a discussion around value proposition is relevant. When your customer thinks about your brand, they think about certain attributes that are associated with the brand. And your value proposition basically is a promise that your company is going to deliver upon a combination of things that the market might value. And it could be price, performance, quality, convenience, expected outcome. It could be a number of things, or it could just be one thing. When you think about the brand Volvo, the automobile manufacturer Volvo, the main thing that they have pushed in their branding, the construction of their vehicles has always been safety and security. And when you think about the brand BMW, BMW has always pushed the ultimate driving machine, the ultimate driving experience. So they're talking about when you buy a BMW, you're buying an experience. When you buy a Volvo, you're buying safety and security. So this is sort of the promise that the customer has in their mind with respect to the value that that vehicle is going to deliver to them. Your products or services are just the same in the sense that you have an implied promise that you're making to the market as well. So I wanted to revisit this topic a little bit just to remind you of some of the things that you do very well and the things that you want to leverage off of. So when you are selling business to business, you have an impact upon your customer's business, and there's lots of different ways that your product or service could impact them. Things like increasing revenue and reducing expenses. Those are two sides of the same coin. When as human beings, we always want more. So we want more revenue, we want more customers, more market share, things like that. So you might want to take reducing expenses and flip that to a positive, which might mean increasing shareholder value, increasing revenue, or it could be, you know, better overall financial performance for the company. So there's different ways you can impact a customer's business, and the main thing I want to share with this slide is specifically around how do you turn these things from a decrease to an increase. So the very last one, for example, is decrease employee turnover. So you might want to use your messaging for your customer to increase employee retention. So these are things that the human brain responds to. If it's more time, more money, more vacation time, more profitability, these are the things that your customers are looking at. So when you talk about value, think about being impactful and specific about the messages that you deliver. So for example, these are some real results around what customers care about. And some of these are taken from actual customers that I've had. And the technology implementation in the first one was about improving the project lead time between the customer and the vendor. And the third one, today the company now experiences 100% on-time export shipping record. This is actually related to the Corona Beer Company in Mexico a number of years ago. They had very big problems getting their product out the door on time for their international distribution network until one of my clients deployed a software solution that basically took care of that whole issue. It took a number of months to deploy, but after all was said and done, they were on time with their export shipping record. Also, you want to look at how you can use words like increased on time, cost savings, reduction, or increase in profitability, or shorter project lead times. These are the kinds of things that your customers are caring about. So when you talk to the market, you want to be focusing on real tangible results, real value that you can deliver to the customer. And again, selling B2B, you want to talk to business executives in their own terms. Usually it's financial. Can you present a financially focused value case for your solution? Whatever you do, you want to align with your customers' goals and priorities. And in many cases, they're going to want to see a return on investment business case. So if I invest $50,000 for your solution, what do I get in return? What's the payback time frame? That sort of thing. The reason that we're going through this is to remind you that it's important to be specific and precise these days with respect to how you serve and support your customers with your existing products or services, or how you're going to expand your business to include other things that they may need or want to buy at this particular point in the economy. Value is important because it helps you, your value message helps you create real strong differentiation in the marketplace. And most importantly, it kind of provides the foundation for your sales strategy. So if I'm selling a business to consumer product, that the consumer is my end customer, let's say I was a shampoo manufacturer and I'm selling bottles of shampoo, my sales force would look different than if I was selling rebar and building materials to the construction industry. So when you are clear on your value, it basically creates the foundation for your sales strategy. And the more clear you are in the market with your messaging, the better quality your sales leads are. So you get better quantity and better quality of sales leads. And I think having a unified message to the market is really, really important, because it also puts pressure on the organization to have much more operational efficiency associated with what the market needs and requires with respect to the levels of engagement, the type of engagement that they expect, that sort of thing. So revisiting the value message is a way for you to kind of get back to where your strengths are, so you can leverage those as you modify your messaging strategy, as you look at your website and see what image and what projection you're putting out there in the marketplace. So as you're looking at refining your message, you want to ensure that you're reflecting the image of the brand that you want to have projected in the industry, and that maybe carries on from what you've been projecting over the last couple years. You want to make sure it fits the customer's expectations, that you're delivering value, and that you have an underlying story behind the product or the company. The story part is really interesting, because that's how we connect emotionally with our customers, talking about the background, the history, how the company came to be. A lot of times when I do startup pitches, I listen to the founder talk about how they got to the point of creating the business, or how they stumbled upon the idea that there was a need for that particular product. Many times it turns out that they have had direct experience with that particular problem in the market, and they saw the lost time, the hassle, just the difficulty of that particular aspect of doing business. And so they created a product that basically solved the problem. So that personal experience that the founder had in understanding the market dynamics, the challenges that the company was facing, et cetera, created a solution that basically could help solve that problem. And there was a great deal of economic value that was delivered to the customer after they bought the solution. So these stories associated with why the company was founded, what value they delivered to the market, these stories are important. That narrative is really, really important, because that story that you tell a lot of times is based on the values that are important to the company. So the value message should reflect what you've done historically with the image of the brand. It should fit the expectations of the market. The story's important. It really, really is. And the refinement of your value message should move the company in the right direction, whatever the right direction is for your company. So if you're creating a new narrative, what does the market need to give you feedback on? Do they need to interact with you differently? Obviously, they need to be informed. Do they need to use new technology or software to interact with you? And I'll give you a very relevant example here in my little town in Silicon Valley. Most of the restaurants well, not most, all the restaurants have closed to sit-down meals. So the only service that the restaurants can provide right now is takeout and delivery. They can't even prepare meals for catering, because catering of large groups and events is not really allowed. So the local restaurants have taken to posting on apps like Nextdoor, on Yelp, on all the other sort of local interactive apps that you can find restaurant reviews and things like that. But the difference is now that they've had to set up Venmo, they've had to set up PayPal, they've had to set up different technologies for themselves as a restaurant to be able to accept payment for takeout or delivery orders. And a number of the restaurants as well are not even charging for delivery locally, because they are struggling to bring in whatever revenue they can. So instead of a $5 or $10 delivery charge, they're waiving that fee if you order a certain amount of food from the restaurant. So the point is that, how does the market need to interact with you as a restaurant differently? Well, now people are having to use technologies that they might not have otherwise. When the guy used to deliver Chinese food to my house, I just paid credit card over the phone and gave them a tip in cash. And now you can't even transact with cash anymore. So just, you need to be thinking about these things with respect to the interaction process that your market has with you. And then with you as a business, what technologies do you need to deploy? And when you do communicate all this, what are the changes? Why? Who's impacted? Who are your existing clients? Your existing customers? You got to talk to your prospects and your suspects, because there may still be needs and opportunities there for you, but you will never know unless you reach out to them. And that's part of what we're going to talk about in our next session on Thursday, is a targeted sales approach, because it's important to really understand, what am I supposed to be communicating to the market if I am a non-essential business, and if I am shut down or only forced to do electronic commerce sales? How do I make all this work? So we're going to talk about a little bit more about that on Thursday from a targeted sales approach process. So as you've been refining your story, your narrative, etc., you need to tell that story and test it and rehearse it in the market. So the first part is to start with your employees, your board members, your customers. If you're fortunate enough to have an established customer advisory board, talk to them, understand their feedback about your new narrative that you want to put out into the market. If you have some prospects that you're fairly deeply engaged with and they understand enough about the company, run it by them. Ask them to give you feedback on the new narrative. And then you've got long-term supporters and cheerleaders of the company that have known the company over the years, and they've seen the history and the trajectory, and they're a supporter of you and they're a supporter of your success. That's another good place for you to test the narrative. So tell the story, test it out, and do it a lot before you roll it out in the next couple of days or weeks on your website and all your marketing materials. I like Stephen Hawking's change. Intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. And we're all in a situation now where we're being forced to adapt to all these changes. And I think that we as entrepreneurs and business people can definitely make that work. I did a little research to find some adaptations of existing businesses' messages. And this particular little bed and breakfast, this little inn in the state of Washington on an island called Whidbey Island, within a week of seeing the news associated with people hoarding paper towels and disinfectants and things like that, this little inn said, "Come enjoy a staycation isolation with us." So for $99 plus tax a night, you get a queen size bed and a suite. It's pet friendly. You have laundry services, fitness, and basically we're going to supply you with toilet paper, paper towels, hand soap, etc., as sort of a tongue-in-cheek. But the idea really is to show you that within a week of the lockdown in Washington state, many places were already taking advantage of this to promote their business, but recognizing that they needed to have a certain level of awareness about the situation that was happening in the world. Orange Theory is a large chain, a physical chain of workout studios. I think they have probably about 1,250 facilities around the United States. They moved all their classes online within just 4 days. So within a relatively short period of time, they figured out how do our class schedules go in relation to people's normal workout habits. Who are our instructors? How are we going to put a class up every day in certain categories? How do we make them accessible to people? So if they miss a day of working out, they can go back to yesterday's class. They're all dated. So it's, Tuesday, March, whatever. But they're trying to make it as optimal for people to still continue working out while they're sheltering in place. So this is an example of a business who would very quickly put all their courses online and made them accessible to their members. I listen to Spotify a lot, and I was just doing some kind of just exploring around, and I found that they have a COVID-19 staycation playlist. And I talked to my daughter, who's a big Spotify fan as well, and she says, "Oh, Mom, there are so many different types of playlists that are coming up related to different aspects of being sheltered in place, whether it's the whole couch potato mentality, meaning I just staying around in my house, and there's a whole set of songs associated with people being lazy. And Sting has a great song, Don't Stand So Close to Me, that's shown up on a number of different playlists. So you're looking at, you know, well-established brands taking advantage of this and injecting a little bit of humor into it, which is what we as human beings do during difficult situations. We make light of the difficulty by you know, tongue-in-cheek and joking about it. But I thought it was interesting that Spotify already had a number of playlists associated with this. And then lastly, the shoe manufacturer New Balance. They're basically saying made shoes yesterday, making masks today. And this is on their main page of their website, but it's it's 2 or 3 clicks down, so you have to scroll down just a little bit. It's not the first thing you see when you go over to the website. But the point is that large brands are, in this particular case, are retooling their factory to help out with, you know, a product demand and a personal protective equipment that healthcare providers and many people need. And so they've retooled, just like Armani and Louis Vuitton and many of these others that have manufacturing facilities. They've retooled to prepare to manufacture PPE or masks or that sort of thing. But I thought it was interesting that a big company like this would put that on their website, put that out in their promotional materials, because they want the market to know that they're doing their part to help the current situation. So I wanted to share a little bit from my own personal narrative, how I went from my old narrative to my new narrative. And this was a couple weeks ago. So my old narrative, so just to remind you, I do a lot of work around the world. I've worked in about 65 different countries, and I'm used to traveling a lot. And so far this year, I've not been on a plane, so I'm not sure if I'll go crazy because I'm not flying anymore, or I'm just going to love it. So far, it's okay. But my old narrative is I'm a company pitch coach who's heard more than 6,000 pitches and trained thousands of founders around the world. So I thought about, what am I doing? Do I still have value in what I do? Is there still an opportunity there in the market? And the answer was yes, yes, and yes. And I modified very slightly what I'm doing. I'm a company pitch coach offering online presentations, reviews, and pitch coaching sessions. I've heard more than 6,000 pitches and trained thousands of founders. So you can see that there's not a lot of difference between the two, other than shifting some of the words and talking about the fact that I offer online capabilities and pitch coaching sessions. And actually, this is not such a new thing, because I've been doing online pitch coaching, I realized, for almost 6 years. So distance pitch coaching for companies. And I worked with the Brazilian government for many years. So we were working with Brazilian founders while they were in Brazil and I was in Silicon Valley. That was just part of the whole project, was doing the online pitch coaching through a webinar or through a meeting session. So it's not such a big difference from what I've been doing. And it's actually just changing the words around a little bit so that I can help people understand how I'm deploying my expertise and my services in a different way. And this is just one of the services that I offer, is coaching. So as you go through this process, and you want to be thinking about, you know, what is our value? What does the market want to hear from us? What's this new narrative that we have to develop? You have to also be thinking about your business model. What's the difference in your business model, if any? As I mentioned to you, the restaurants locally here in my little town, they've had to make some changes to their business from a technology perspective. And certainly a huge drop in revenue because they don't have customers coming in to sit at their tables anymore. But you need to be thinking about the financial impact of a change in your business model. What does this really mean to the company? And how do you, how much time do you need to do those cash flow projections? Excuse me, how much time do you need to have enough assurances that the business model will work so you can do accurate cash flow projections to give yourself a picture of what the next 90 days looks like, for example? Because, of course, your employees want to know what the future looks like for them. And if you are quick enough to modify your value proposition, your value message, etc., and your business model, then I think it gives you much more confidence and assurance so you can communicate that to your team members. So as you're talking about your new narrative and you've gotten to a point where it makes sense, it resonates, you've bounced it off lots of different people, you got to change everything where your company name is. So everything from your website all the way through to your electronic business cards, maybe not your physical business cards because you're not really giving people physical business cards these days, but change your online business card so that you can send that as an attachment or append it to your email. I would suggest that everybody in the company modify their email signature line, and that your communications team or your communications person craft an email signature line that everybody in the company can put on their emails. So this is a way to remind people as they're sending emails that the business is different, that it's the new normal. And it's also for everybody you're reaching out to in the industry, whether it's your vendors, your suppliers, your service providers, your IT group, whatever it is, everybody sees that you have a new email signature line. If you're still doing sales and you're doing more phone sales now, then look at your phone scripts and determine what modifications need to be made to your scripts. Any brochures, where is the company listed on directories? You know, does the local Chamber of Commerce have you on a listing? If it does, make sure you change that wherever possible. If your Chamber of Commerce is even operating right now. I know locally mine is closed down indefinitely. So then you got to think about your social media identifiers. So your Twitter feed, there's usually a place for you to identify yourself and your profile, the company profile. So that's an opportunity for you to make a change in your social media identifiers. What about your blogs? What about all the portfolio of work that you have online, or the case studies that you have, or the success stories that you have? Thinking about what frequency your newsletter comes out, and when do you want to have your next version of your newsletter come out to your customer base or your prospect base. So I want you to be thinking about every possible place that your company name can show up, all the different resources that are out there, and think about how do you manage the narrative, the subtle narrative change or the big narrative change, whatever it is. But everything should be around changing this narrative so that you can get your team aligned and unified around this new narrative, and then you align and unify the market around this new narrative. So partners are an important part of this too. So are there ways that you could potentially partner with a company or an individual that has a complementary set of skills or expertise or value? This is a great opportunity to talk to a company, for example, that may be facing similar challenges as your company, and that you guys are very aligned on the product suite, putting the products together, or some complementary and when I say complementary, I'm not talking free. I'm meaning that you're complementing one another with your skills and expertise. So is this a good opportunity for you now to talk to partners about some short-term projects or programs? I think it is. I think this is a great way for you to move together and do a lot of little initiatives, or maybe even some big initiatives about how you're going to prospect together, share information, or focus on 2 or 3 high-value clients that you want to work together on. In the partner relationship, it's important that you guys be aligned on purpose and value. You want to make sure that you're reliable and that you follow through on all your commitments. So this is a really important time now to build trust with a partner that you might see as a long-term relationship with the company going forward. On the partnerships, I think it's important to note that it's not always equal in partnerships. Sometimes it's someone brings more abilities, expertise, or value to the relationship. So the point is to focus on being equitable, not necessarily equal. So this means you have to have a real clear communication about what everybody's bringing to the table in this partner relationship. And how people are going to get compensated, for example. So I have a series of programs that I'm going to roll out to a global co-working space for their startups. And I'm bringing the content to them, and they're providing the platform and the database and the hundreds of startups that are part of each one of their facilities. And in this case, it'll be a different kind of revenue share than a 50-50, because I'm bringing more of the content and they're bringing basically the attendee base. So we're trying to figure out what the right or the equitable distribution of the revenue is for that particular partnership. So lastly, define the roles, the responsibilities, how you're going to measure whether or not this partnership is successful. What are sort of the estimations that you would like to have? What's your best case scenario? So in 4 weeks, we'd like to have X number of suspects moving to prospects, and how you define what a suspect is versus what a prospect is. Those are all sort of nuanced definitions for your own business, but you need to be thinking about these kinds of things. How many prospects do we expect to move to the proposal phase? How many from the proposal phase to the contract phase? So these are all things you want to be thinking about when you're measuring the partnerships. You want to try to have these discussions as early as possible. I like this quote too. Our ability to adapt is amazing. Our ability to change isn't quite as spectacular. So this is really reflective of the human condition, in the sense of, everybody has to change. We all love change. We just don't want to do it ourselves. So it ends up being, how do we adapt as best we can to the new reality and the new situations that are going on? So my advice is keep calm and adapt, because that's what we really have to do at this juncture. It's a whole different ball game than it ever was before. So